Right, so here we are, getting to the front sprocket. Got the side casing off. Now one thing to note here, a lot of side cases people get terrified in case when they're taking them off there's a load of oil. On this side of the engine, generally speaking, check your manual, I wouldn't want to be 100%, you'll find your regulator, your generator. They call them starters and all sorts of stuff like that. Anyways, that's your generator, that's what creates your electricity to charge your battery and run the bike, and that's on this side of the engine. And because it's electrical, there's no oil. Right, you get some bikes where they've got weird setups and all that. I don't know, maybe I don't know all bikes, so it's worth, when you're going to do some work on your own bike, get a manual, yeah, and check it out before you start tearing things apart. I wouldn't want to be the one that you're coming back to who's, you know, telling them, oh well, you told me I was alright and I've ended up with oil dumped all over the place and whatever. You can't blame anybody but yourself because you didn't do the research. Same as myself. I've been in exactly the same situation before, where I've started a job and then realised, hang on, I should have looked at this a bit closer. Anyways, now we're ready to start removing this sprocket on the front. Yeah, and 2 bolts holding it in. I'll check the new sprocket in a minute. Sorry, we're cut off because I ran out of storage space on my SD card. I need to do some clearing down. Anyway, I'm going to check the other sprocket to make sure that these are the same before I start pulling this off. But if you look at these, you can see the spread on those teeth and how sharp these points are becoming. That's a pretty well worn sprocket. You can see down here, look at the spread in there. That's more than it should be. It should be nicely rounded rather than this elongated shape. So that tells you your sprocket's knackered. So it needs to be changed anyway. I know many moons ago when we used to ride these sort of bikes, you used to take it off and turn it round, and that way it would wear the opposite side of the pin. Not ideal, but when you were skint and they were costing a lot of money, it was a way forward. A new chain and turn your sprockets around and it would give you a bit more life. And then you would get to the point where you were tightening your chain to the point where it was ready to snap, just to get a bit more purchase before you could buy another one. So anyways, there we are, we'll get that out, we'll get that swapped over, and then we'll get the chain laid on. So there we got, back in a minute. I'll show you this bit quickly. You see this plate here, it actually slides round to line up with the holes, and it locks into these tags here because there's a slot behind that. Not all sprockets have this arrangement, but some do. This one, you'll see the bolt went through there, and then you have to tap that back until it drops into these grooves. Obviously when it comes to putting it back on again, you've got to put it back in and tap it back the other way so it lines up with the holes. You can put the bolts back in. That locks the sprocket on so it can't come off. And those 2 bolts, they're not mega tight, they're simply just tight enough to stop that plate from moving. And that's all you need. Stop them from winding themselves out, but stop that from moving. That's the key bit there. And the other thing is, when you come to taking this off, you see it's sort here. Well, you pop it into gear, a low gear. That gives you maximum compression, heavier gearing, and it means that you can actually normally pull them apart. If you can't, if it's still jumping, you shove a screwdriver through one of these sprocket teeth and into the casing. Under the casing rather, so that it actually creates a wedge, and you can work against that, and that'll probably do you the job. You normally find that'll do the job. So, but again, always you take care. You don't force anything, not too much, because otherwise it'll come back and bite you. Yeah. So we'll carry on. See you in a bit. Remember, a part that's been on as long as this has made a strong attachment with the rest of the bike. Don't want to come out. So the trick with this is, you've only got the one point where you can get anything in, and that's up here through this gap. So a decent sized screwdriver in behind, but you can only lever off one part. So you drop it to neutral, you spin it around, and you keep spinning it around bit by bit, working it a little bit. Eventually it'll come a bit loose. As you can see, I've put a little bit of that lovely lubricating fluid we call WD-40 on there, and that's helped it to ease a bit. And you work it backwards and forwards, and then you can lock it back into gear again, and by rocking it, you can see how it's rocking itself back on there. I don't know if you can see with this light, this wonderful sunlight. Yeah, swap hands, maybe you'll see a bit better there. No, maybe not. but rocking it backwards and forwards, top and bottom, it'll eventually work itself off and you can lift it free. So we'll get that done, get the new one on, get it all tightened up, and we'll be sorted. See you in a minute. Right, just putting this back on, and one thing I've noticed is it makes it a lot easier for putting it on, where this sprocket actually taps back further than it needs to go, which is beautiful, because then when you come to putting this on, you can slide it into place perfectly easy, and then get your two nuts, your two bolts rather, in there, tighten them up, and it'll pull the sprocket up to that plate and locking it in position, which is great news. Makes it a lot easier than struggling with screwdrivers and hammers trying to batter things around, which you sometimes damage. So we'll get this in and we'll get it snugged up, and see you in a minute. Front sprocket in, chain laid in, nicely run, doesn't look pretty high, right around there. Now it comes to this bit, the split link, right, or the chain replacement link, whatever you want to call it. Any of you that have watched my diversion video where I did my chain on there and did the chain tensioning, you'll know that we had two options. We had this sort of thing, a split link, which is like that one. You can see there's a little line between those two parts of hole. It basically springs open and you pop it on there and it clips in place. So you've got the link here, which is the back plate, the two pins, and then a separate front plate which I've just squeezed on with a pair of pliers and it's popped on. And just where my fingernail's flicking, that's the little ridges in the pins, which something like a circlip, which is what this is designed to be, will go on, and it slips on and then turns. Bit of a trick to do. It turns and it slides forward so that it clips into the other pin. Bit of pliers and screwdriver will be what you need to put it on. Now on the diversion, we also had one that you put in, was called a rivet link. This bike not being as big and being quite a bit older, they deem that a rivet link's not necessary and that this is sufficient. Always put it on facing the direction of travel, so the wheel will travel this way, the chain will travel that way, so this goes on that way around. That way it can't be knocked off. If it was that way around and caught something, it can come off, come away, your chain comes apart and does all sorts of untold damage, as well as leaving you stranded with no way of getting home. So that way on, it can only ever be knocked on rather than off. Yeah, obviously if you were going in reverse you could do something stupid, but you'd have to be doing a hell of a speed and something ridiculous, and you wouldn't be doing a lot of speed there, so it's irrelevant. So let's get this fastened up, get that casing back on, and of course remember the golden rule, putting steel bolts into aluminium casings, copper slip, yeah, every time, otherwise it's another one will come back and bite you. Right, so let's press on, we'll get this done, and I don't know how far we'll get the day. You never know, might even get it to fire up. That would be fun, wouldn't it? So let's get on with this, we'll sort it out and we'll be back in a minute. Right, so that's the chain all on, everything looking sweet, tensioned up and everything. Putting the side gears back on. A couple of things to point out, like I said before, the magic copper grease when you put your bolts in, yeah, tighten those in and they'll be fine. It'll come out an awful lot easier. It's not 100% proof, but 99 is better than 0. This little point here, gear change selector, the rod that goes through this casing, yeah. I recently had an issue on my diversion. Changing gear was really hard. There was times I had to stamp on the lever to get it to go, especially if it had been sat for a little while. Really hard work. Couldn't figure out what the problem was. Checked oils, checked clutch, checked everything else. Taking this casing off on the diversion was a real pain, and I ended up prizing it off, and it was just this part here where it passes through this casing and it actually corroded, and that corrosion was binding on the selector rod, which made it very hard work. So when you put this one back on, That one on the diversion's got rubber seals either side. You need to put some sort of rubber grease and stuff into there. But this one, there's no rubber. It's just the aluminium casing against the steel rod. Where have we heard that before? So, bit of copper slip on there as well. Cures that problem for the future. Yeah. Now, when you come to tension in your chain, we'll come back to that now. You see the movement on there. The wheel's off the ground. Right. So that wheel's off the ground. That is okay for off the ground. When you're tensioning your chain, always have your bike flat on the ground. All its weight down on the ground. And when it's down on the ground, actually what I'll do is I'll wind the jack down and put the bike back on the ground. If you watch that, you can see it settling. Right, so that's it settled down onto itself now. That's just being held on the straps I've got on the front. And you see the difference in that. There is a little difference. That is pretty much fine. Maybe a little tweak up, but that's pretty much fine. Yeah. Once you're sat on the bike as well, that'll actually shorten this distance. It'll tighten the chain a bit more, and you don't want your chain too tight. Otherwise, it's just going to tension and snap. And there's your split link, and you see fixed on, nice and tight, snug. Plenty of grease in there. This one doesn't supply little grease with it because you haven't got O-rings on this, so it's not so necessary. There's plenty of grease in that, and obviously you make sure you keep your chain lubed. Otherwise it gets dry, tightens up, rusts up and snaps. But that's looking quite pretty there now. Get a bit of polish on the chrome around here. You can see there's a bit of rust spotting where it's just been sat, and also on the chain guard over there, and this will be looking quite pretty. So let's get on with the next bit, see how we get on, and we'll come back to you. Bye for now.